Now, once we frame it as could somebody exact skill set be achieving more than you, then it forces, and you say yes, then it forces you to accept the reality that, oh wait, it's not more skills. It's not a knowledge gap. It's that I have everything in place, but there's also a part of resisting doing that. So therefore, that's the actual need to solve. And I just think it's a great both filtering question for me to understand who will actually be up for the work that this stuff requires because they want to achieve more. And it also gives them a lot of clarity on what the actual constraint is.
What if the reason that you're stuck isn't a lack of knowledge or skills about training or nutrition, but it's simply about your mindset? That's the core idea behind Itamar Marani's new book, Elite Performance. And I'm delighted to have Itamar back on the podcast. It's been 3 years since we last had him. Just as a recap, he's a former Israeli Special Forces operator, BJJ black belt. He was Israel's youngest ever air marshal, and he was coached by Mossad's former chief psychologist. He now helps entrepreneurs and high performers get out of their own way with their mindset stuff. And in this conversation, we talk about the face punch question that reveals whether mindset is holding you back, why adding more pressure usually lowers performance instead of raising it, the 5-step blueprint from his book to win this war within, how to build guardrails to protect your family, fitness, and happiness while chasing your goals, and the difference between pursuing excellence and falling into perfectionism, which I know sounds good, but trust me, it's not. This episode is about doing more, achieving more, sustainably, strategically, and without sabotaging yourself and burning it. I hope you enjoy this conversation. It's been a while. Thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you for having me.
It's 3 years ago, actually, to the day since I released our first podcast. And since then, a few of the Rip Body readers have been through your coaching program. So I've not only heard great things separately in my our entrepreneur bubble, but I've also heard great things through those people who have gone through your program, 2 of which have also been customers of mine. So that's fantastic. And I've got you back on today because you have a book that is coming out, will probably be out the day after we release this pod. So I'm excited for that. It's called Elite Performance, the Israeli Special Ops Mindset System to win the war within and achieve audacious goals. I've read the book. I was actually in full editing mode at the time because I was just in the process of finishing up editing the Muscle and Strength Pyramid books, our 3rd editions there. And, I just couldn't help myself. And I just dug in. Super interesting stuff, man.
Thank you.
It's really nice to have you. What was it that has made you want to write this book?
It's a great question. I think what made me want to write this book, and I say it actually in there, it's 2 things. My whole philosophy has always been about how to create big win-wins in life and business and so on. This current life that I live, as opposed to special ops, is something that I try not to zero-sum game. Basically that if I can give more, people can get more, and actually also give more as well. It's not just me against other people. And it's a philosophy I've tried to carry. Now, like you said, I do coach people, and I do coach like in group programs or one-on-ones, and it's pretty high price, especially the one-on-ones for most people. And this was a way where I could share the lessons, both from my time in the special operations, being mentored by the Mossad's former chief psychologist, and just coaching hundreds of entrepreneurs in a way that's accessible to everyone. And I knew that was going to be a really big win. I can make the world a better place, so to speak. I can help a lot of people that feel that they should be achieving more, achieve more. And on top of that, from a very pragmatic perspective, I had no doubt that if we put out our best stuff and literally try to give everything away, there's going to be some people that are like, wow, this is great. Can you just help us with it? And that's a win-win, where it grows our business, but it also does a good thing for the world. And honestly, that was a practical level of why I created the book and why I spent the last year and a half really just like nailing it in so it's airtight.
Yeah, this has been my approach as well. You've been doing this perhaps for a similar number of years now. Is it 4 years that you've been?
About 5.5.
Okay, so a similar number of years when I released my first book. And the first book I did for sale was the Diet Adjustments Manual. And that was because I had too many people applying for it. And I wanted to get out. Okay, here's exactly as I'm doing this. I'm thinking that if I just told people my exact process, that would be a cheap kind of replacement for the coaching. It's only many years later that I really discovered that the key to the coaching is really the accountability piece and helping people stop second guessing themselves, right? It's not just the exact how-tos, but hey, look, it was the same motivation, same intention. It just worked out gloriously well. Just putting out everything that I could, essentially like for free or next to free, has just come back tenfold. So I'm excited for what this does, both within the community and how it can help people, and I'm excited for what you can share. There's one thing that you got in the book, it immediately jumps out, and I remember, I think you used it in the lunchtime seminar that you did at this one conference we were both at in Bangkok. and you stood at the front. So I have a question. It used to be front page of the website. I may have tweaked the language since, but it was what I call a face punching question. And it is, do you look the same as you did 6 months ago?
Okay.
And that's a bit of a face punching question for people who
Yeah.
are looking to change their
Yeah.
physique, because they're like, okay, I've been hitting the gym, I've been looking after my diet, but damn it, yes, I do. Right now, your face punch question was, I still remember it, is, could somebody else with your exact skill set be achieving more than you currently? And you say on this, it's something like, if that is the case, then you don't have a skills problem, you have a mindset problem. So let's work on that. And my goodness, when it comes to the coaching, so much of what we do now at Rip Body is about getting people to get out of their own way when it comes to putting everything together so that they can just really execute and succeed. And can you tell us this phrase, could somebody else with your exact skill set be achieving more than you currently are? Why do you choose to lead with this?
Because it achieves two things. First off, it separates people who actually care about achieving more than those big things that nobody likes to say, but it's true. And like with you, you can't coach somebody who doesn't want to improve, right? Who doesn't want to change things. So naturally for the people that does pinch a bit, like I said, punches them in the face, they're the kind of people who have an innate competitiveness or innate desire to do more than they currently are. That's first off. So first off, I'm saying, okay, these are the kind of people this could be relevant for. Then on top of that, it helps them clarify what the actual bottleneck is. Like my frustration with, let's call it a lot of the, whether you want to call it self-help, psychology, that realm, is that everything is very random. It's just, let's just do a bunch of general healing instead of figuring out what's actually holding you back from achieving what you say you want to achieve. Now, once we frame it as, could somebody else with your exact skill set be achieving more than you, then it forces, and you say yes, then it forces you to accept the reality that, oh wait, it's not more skills. It's not a knowledge gap. It's that I have everything in place, but there's also a part of me that's resisting doing that. So therefore, that's the actual bottleneck. That's what I need to solve. And I just think it's a great both filtering question for me to understand who will actually be up for the work that this stuff requires because they want to achieve more. And it also gives them a lot of clarity on what the actual constraint is.
I love it. I'll tell you the thing that immediately comes to my mind is I need to get on YouTube and make longer form videos. And I also need to get back on Instagram and creating new content because there are lots of people out there who are achieving more than I currently am in those domains. And it's not to say that I should or must. Business is great. However, if I do want to be true to the mission, which is to help as many people as we can. And in my mind, that is not in the number of clean underwear that I can buy each year, right? It's the number of people that we can help. It's the number of emails that we get in my inbox that are like, hey man, look, thank you so much. And blah, blah, blah. And boom, just paragraphs and paragraphs. And it's just, wow, it just means the world.
Apology here for
And then so
let's say this, and this is something we talk about in the book. There's two parts of each of us. There's this more like evolved oriented part of you that says, I want to do more. It aligns with the mission. And I was actually going to pause you before and be like, why do you actually want to grow the business? But it sounds like you have a deep, legitimate why. This is something that I feel like is a calling in the world that I want to achieve. So you have that part. And you also have a part of you that's telling you why this is a bad idea, that's telling you to stop doing it. Because in reality, it's like, I'm going to assume you don't have a wife and kids yet, that you do have more free time to do this. You could do this, so to speak. So why do you think that part in you, what is the story it's telling you about why that's a bad idea?
My face being out there more, I have some nerves around that because I worry that people will prejudge who I am. Other people that put themselves
before
out
that,
there.
and if they prejudge who you are, then
that will make me feel bad. That will affect relationships potentially in life.
Can I pause you for a sec?
I will lose privacy.
So this is interesting. And we talked a little bit about the podcast before we got on the podcast about some of the concepts in the book. So basically, when this happens, when we know what we should be doing, it's something we actually care about, and we're not doing it, it's our brain causing us to believe that this is a bad idea for some reason. And we talked about this in the last podcast as well, that there's these primal fears, these connections we've picked up about how the world works, and we over-index on the fear. And usually three main ones. There's one, you avoid uncertainty. Two, you seek validation. And three, you want to be liked. And when usually you have those kind of things where you either want approval, validation, or trying to crave, like just to avoid uncertainty, we make these irrational things in our head. Like how you said, like people that I don't know might not want to connect with me. It's not a rational thing, but our brain starts creating these stories, you know what I mean? And I think oftentimes a big part of it is just understanding that these are the forces that work against us. That, like, why am I afraid of this? Oh, because it just is. It's my wiring from 100,000 years ago where I was over paranoid because we lived in small tribes in the savannah, and somebody possibly not liking me could cause me to get ostracized from the tribe. And then I'd be alone in the savannah and die. And my brain illogically still thinks it's the same thing today about posting on Instagram and getting a negative comment. I still get the same physical reaction from that, even though it's a completely different context. So first off, does that kind of resonate? with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
And then there's also this embarrassment. Let's say I give it my all, but no one cares. It's crickets and it's shit. It's like the success with the blog and the success with email, the success with the book sales, the success with coaching. There's this whole new medium and it doesn't give a shit about any of that. And the numbers are the numbers.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe there's a fear of failure or embarrassment.
There is.
What if things
There absolutely is. But a question for you. All the actions we take in life, at the end of the day, are to feel a certain way. So what is the feeling that you're hoping to get out of this business? Is it a sense of satisfaction, a sense of pride, or is it just, I want to feel like I got a good result from a lot of people?
I want to be proud of the stuff that we've
Right.
done and the number of people that we've been able to help.
Right. So if you keep that as your actual North Star, do you see where I'm going with this? Like, it would make sense that even if you're saying to yourself in the frame you can put this on, say, if I put out that content, no matter where it lands, I'm still proud that I took the actions that I would tell somebody else to take if they wanted to achieve this goal. And by constantly focusing on what would make me proud supersedes the fear sometimes of people will judge, what if it doesn't land? It doesn't matter because I'm not going for what will land. I'm trying to be the kind of person that I'm proud of. And that means taking the kind of actions that have uncertainty built into them or possible rejection.
Right.
You know what I mean? And having that kind of frame and understanding how our minds work, it allows us to shift from that and to actually just take the actions.
Yeah, because the pain of not doing that is increasing day by day because we will also increase the pain of regret that just gets ramped up. Right?
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to break from because the pain of regret, beyond the pain of regret, what people don't talk about as much is also the lowered self-esteem. And it becomes this downward cycle where one day you don't do what you know you should be doing and your self-image of yourself gets a little bit lessened. And then you're like, okay, I'm not the kind of person who does this. I only do a little bit less. And then you keep doing it just a little bit less, until you all of a sudden wake up and have the self-image of someone who doesn't do anything, who's not an action taker. And obviously that's just going to lead to less action and to more frustration. And that's, I think, bigger than just regret. It's the regret, let's call it an emotional level. It's there, but also on a very practical level, as far as your tangible results, that self-identity causes you to have diminished results because you keep taking less and less action.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. How do you most commonly see this when you start people?
It's a great question. So when I start coaching people, usually they have a goal. Like they don't come unless they want to achieve something. And the way we do it is simply what we did here. So, okay, what do you want to achieve? And there's usually some kind of external goal. I want to get the company to this. I want to do that, whatever it may be. And the first thing we have to figure out is why are they not executing? Again, just from a theory of constraints, what's going on? Oftentimes, like we saw here, it's first off, there wasn't an establishment of extreme clarity. Like you had this mission that was very inspiring. You didn't know how it resonated back to you as far as you prioritizing what you actually want to feel. So, okay, what do you want to feel? You said pride. Okay, great. Now what do you need to do in order to be proud? You said, I need to post more. I need to do this regardless of what it ends up. Because if I do those things, I'll feel proud of myself. Great. That's phase one. Then phase two, if let's say someone comes to me and they're actually very clear on that, everything is aligned, super clear, and they've even boiled it down to say my next seasonal focus, which is to post more on Instagram and said content in general, correct? YouTube.
Yeah.
Great. So what happens now is that there's different kinds of thinkers. Some people can see the big picture. Some people are more granular. And a lot of times people that can see the big picture can also see the small details. And that's what keeps them stuck. So the next part is about how do we break that down into the most clear actions that could possibly be so that we can actually hold you accountable to them. And a simple exercise that I do with everybody is, okay, Andy, let's run this with you. So imagine somebody else came and took over Rip Body, okay? This person was constantly drunk. They were constantly high. They were overweight and lethargic. And on top of that, they had newborn twins, okay? They had all these performance factors working against them. Yet somehow they were able to get more reach across social media and YouTube than you, to the right kind of people. What do you think would have been the 1 to 3 things they would have done that would have made that possible, despite being much less disciplined than you are?
I imagine they'd have woken up earlier, despite having less sleep.
Because?
And having a fixed block in their day where it's a non-negotiable before they're disturbing anybody or starting to feel like a bad dad, which many clients do. They get out of shape because they give their time to their families and work and their spouses. And they sacrifice their nutrition and their training to an extent because they see it as this false dichotomy. Whenever they spend time on their training or nutrition, they feel that it's pulling away time from their family or work or their spouse, and they start to feel bad about that. And so then they do less and less, but then they end up getting pulled away and carried out on this tide of physical decline. And then that kind of comes back to now past a certain point, and this is individual for everyone. They feel that, me actually being pulled away on this physical decline is actually more of a negative than if I were to carve out time to look after myself, and I need to pull this back so that I can be there for my family in the future, long term. And so perhaps it's similar there. This guy is probably going to have had to wake up and do it early before the day can just smash them. And then they're running on fumes by the end of the day, and then they're starting to feel bad. Do it early because that way it's not interrupting with the family time, and put it in the calendar and making it a non-negotiable and stay consistent.
Okay, and what were those specific actions that, like, what is the specific output that he's looking at? Is it 3 pieces of content a week on YouTube? What are those like hyper-specific things that you could hold him accountable to? Say, if he actually did these things, that would probably create the outcome we desire.
Yeah, if I think back to the coaching that we do here at Rip Body, people come in, generally speaking, super keen. However, most of these super keen people
need to chill out and just do what's simple.
They need to chill out very much. And the reason that they've failed in the past is because they've gone through cycles of being super keen. They've tried to do absolutely everything, and then they've not been able to achieve it. So while you could say, yeah, 3 pieces of long form content on YouTube per week and Instagram every day, that's the equivalent of someone coming in and saying, I'm going to do a 1,500 calorie diet. I'm going to do cardio every day. I'm going to do a bro split in the gym. I'm going to eat 2 meals. It's just completely unsustainable given their current set of habits where they're at.
So what do you think would be and impact generating for you, for example, for content and
1 solid YouTube video a week and then 3 Instagram posts a week? And when it comes to the type of Instagram posts, I think it's face to camera because that can't just easily be replicated. It's a very no nonsense style, and it's the type of video where I get DMs from friends who I respect, who are like, wow, man, that was a good video. I've been wondering about that. And that's the goal. Nothing like short clickbait, just something that is thought-provoking and very helpful.
And the goal with that is to, again, expand the mission or to educate people that are already part of your world.
Educate people, I'd say, that are part of the world, but they're not necessarily, like, they're part of the world or they're flirting on being part of the world. What I mean is these are people who, they no longer believe in miracles, shortcuts, hacks. Biohacking is starting to feel like a bit of a vulgar term to them because they've noticed that although it sounded great initially, that there's a lot of shitheads that use the biohacking identity in their bio, and they're like, okay, there's probably a red flag here. And now they're looking for something else. They're looking for a voice of common sense. And so it has to reach, it's content that is only going to reach those people who are ready for it, but it's going to be very helpful when they're ready.
So what we're doing here is we're making sure that these, like, you basically have 3 key actions here. Fixed block of deep work at the beginning of the day, 1 solid YouTube video a week, and 3 face to camera videos, like you said. And what we're doing here is we're making sure this is actually aligned to what you say you really want. And doing these things will make you feel proud. Now, the reason we're doing that, and this is so important, like I'm fact checking it, is because when we have incongruencies between what we say we want and what we're doing and it doesn't add up, our mind recognizes this. It knows it doesn't, like, this actually won't add up to that. So we don't take action because we know. And a lot of times when you find yourself just procrastinating, not really doing it, it's because you know it's a plan, a part of you at least, deep down knows it's a plan that's not probably going to work. It's just random actions. It wasn't strategic. And what's interesting is, like you saw, we got something very strategic here very quick because I got you out of your own head. I didn't ask you like, Andy, okay, if you want to accomplish this, what do you think you should do? Because the moment we ask someone this, their emotional biases and blind spots immediately pop up. They just say, oh, I should do this and this. What really they're saying is, I feel more comfortable doing this, or this is more familiar to me. And it's why, for example, when a friend asks you for advice, it's so easy to give him great advice because you're not seeing his world through your own emotional like blocks or challenges or comfort. You're just seeing it objectively. You're like, you should just do this. This is very clear. Just do this. When we externalize that question and stop asking, what should I do right now? But what would a person do who's already compromised with this and this to achieve this goal? The answer becomes very clear. And when we get to this level now, we say, okay, now we're clear on what you should do. Great. That's the first part. Now let's figure out why parts of you might resist doing that. And that's the next part. Like what you talked about before the podcast about the 5-step blueprint we introduced in the book. That's the first 2 parts of the blueprint, like getting extreme clarity and then finding the most direct path, which is what you have. Say, if all I do is just have a fixed deep work block at the beginning of my days and put out 1 YouTube video a week plus 3 to camera, that's my most direct path to getting what I want.
Could you take us through those next 3 steps? Could you just give us an overview of those next 3 steps and then run us through them?
I'll do that. And I'll also, for the sake of the listener, I'll also try to relate this back to health. What do you see are the common trends? Like, I think that's the goal. If we could get the listener to say, okay, these are probably one of the things that's hurting me and help them overcome that through their podcast, that'll be a podcast that was worth doing. So after getting clarity on what somebody wants and finding the most direct path to do that, not every possible gimmick, but the most direct path you could do it, even if you're a bit compromised, which basically means the 80-20. It's next about figuring out why you're resisting that on a very surface level. So before getting into the deep mental blocks, the beliefs, the fears, there's some surface level stuff that could actually be very easily resolved. And once that is easily resolved, it makes things much easier. So we want to address that first. There's no reason to do the hard things when you might not need to do them. And the first part of that is installing guardrails. So what I'm sure you notice a lot with people in the health community, like this is a common one that I've even heard, is that I don't want to go on a diet because that means I won't be able to eat tasty food or have social interactions with friends. And if you can say, okay, I hear your concern, you don't go all in on this because you're afraid it's going to ruin your social relationships, what's a simple fix we can put in place? You know when kids are bowling in the bowling alley and they put those blockers, those on the guardrails on the gutters so they can just go for it? Like how can...
This is exactly what came to mind when I was reading the book. Yes.
So it's like, how can we make you feel like that? What if we just say, you know what, for 2 days out of the week, you get to have a dinner with your friends. Just order a big chunk of protein, but then also have whatever you want. Would that fill that for you? Would that relieve that pressure of, I can't do this, is a bad idea? Or if you're afraid, for example, that if I go on the health stuff, I'm not going to be able to maintain my business. Okay, what if we also just set up weekly one-on-ones with your head of departments? Because right now it's a mess and you were able to get away with that mess, but now you also want to focus on this. So what if we sort that out so you have this very clear overview? Like, oh, yeah, okay, now I feel like that's okay. So for you, Andy, like what is your concern that if we all of a sudden take that chunk in your morning and you focus on content, what is one of your concerns that immediately pops into your head about why this is a bad idea? This was caused me to risk this or that.
Okay, I have an answer for that. Can we come back to that?
Just go
through 1 and 2 of what I see as being common. So step 1 is going to be getting extreme clarity on what it is we want to achieve.
And what is the feeling behind it?
And
at the end of the
why.
day, like we do everything for a feeling. And like you saw, if we can just recognize that as the first foundation, that for example, you wanted to feel a sense of pride, it both creates clarity on what you should be doing and gives you the fuel to push through. As cliche as it sounds, that old, he who has a strong enough why can bear almost anyhow. It is true. So that's why we have to lock that in first.
So a very common one here will be, I need to lose 30 pounds.
And then I would ask them why.
30 pounds. And the why is going to be because I need to do it for... Vanity is part of it. But the higher level why for most clients now is for their families, so that they're far less likely to run into certain negative health outcomes that could result in children being fatherless, ultimately, or fatherless early.
Or can I say something
it could
uncomfortable?
Also be that so they can...
Or also to give them an example. If, especially as a man, like if you have boys and you're giving them an example of someone who's overweight and unhealthy, will you feel proud of that, of the example you provided for them? Just that could be a very deep, in-your-face question to ask yourself.
It's a massive one. So yeah, those two are huge. So getting clear on the what and the why. And it might be that, let's say 30 pounds and you want to be there in, you don't even have to give a short-term time frame. You could say in a year. Wouldn't it be fantastic if I was 30 pounds down? Okay. Next level is the how. Could you just, what's the exact phrasing for that step 2?
So if somebody, I'm trying to think about the health equivalent of this, because I usually work with guys in business. The health equivalent is if somebody, let's say like they had a very long taxing job, okay? They weren't able to always get their meal plans. They had all these conditions working against them, right? They had to travel a lot, whatever it might be. But they're still able to lose those 30 pounds over a year and create an environment where that's sustainable for them. What would have been to 1 to 3, just 1 to 3, not like you said, not a million, but 1 to 3 key things that would have enabled that?
Yeah, okay. So for most of the guys, it's going to be, unfortunately, shifting the gym time, not from whenever I can get it in, which inevitably leads to a 4-day plan that turns into actually about 2 days a week because you're trying to get it in on lunch, but that often doesn't happen, or then after work, but then that doesn't happen, to early mornings, just so that you get it out of the way before you've even checked your email. And then you just managed all of the rest of the work and responsibilities for the day, you just managed to slide in. So that's a massive one for most people. So shifting that, putting it in the calendar first thing in the morning, which will then mean they need to go to bed a little bit earlier, which can mean sacrificing a bit of, and when you think about it, it's probably a bit of Netflix and a bit of doom scrolling time, which most people can actually do if they actually audit the time. And then the other things, it varies, but the diet is going to be the big one here. And for some, it's going to be cutting out the alcohol at home. So the 1 or 2 drinks a night, if they simply cut that out and they break the habit of having dessert with everything, that can be huge. And then the other thing is making it easy. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits, and we were talking about that off camera before we started. Make the actions that you want to be your new habits as frictionless as possible. So you could commit to shopping in advance and having everything in the fridge in advance so that you can nail your nutrition targets and eat the right foods. And then it just becomes your choice of whether you are or are
Yeah,
not.
and keep the bad stuff out of the house.
You're not saying that you are. Yeah, the bad stuff
Yeah.
out of the house, good stuff in the house, so that really you're giving yourself no excuse to go for Uber Eats or whatever it is when you've got everything ready right there. Those would probably be two of the biggest ones.
Yeah, I think those are the things. Like, if you can figure out what are those simple things that it creates, and this is something we talk a lot about in the book, that there's this myth that the more pressure you put on yourself, the better you'll perform. Pressure makes diamonds, something that everyone likes to say. In reality, that's not true. If you're complacent, sometimes getting a kick in the ass and putting a bit more pressure on someone does help performance. However, there's also a tipping point in the bell curve where too much pressure actually causes overwhelm and anxiety. And that's where people's performance tanks. Now, what you said here that's really great is you're saying just do these things. Like, don't drink alcohol and have desserts automatically. Have good stuff in your house and just default to that and work up in the morning. You don't have to think about 1,000 different things. Like, when you have just that little bit, that can keep you in that peak performance zone where there's some pressure because you want to improve, but you don't feel overwhelmed. And I think that's a big component of this, that if you just focus on the 1 to 3 things, because there's an 80-20 to everything, it becomes sustainable. So, like, yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, you talked about this. So it's not only something that we've observed in our coaching, just the need to simplify. But yeah, you've absolutely nailed it with that bell graph that you have in the book, with the tipping point and then the anxiety and overwhelm just absolutely smashing people as the pressure gets ramped up. So then let's go to the third step.
So the third step, again, was the guardrails, where people have to figure, because there's some really valid things. There's some beliefs that we have in our head that are complete nonsense. That there's like beliefs that we formed in childhood or early on in a career that are complete nonsense. Some things are actually valid logical concerns. So for example, like we both know people in the entrepreneurial community that are, let's say, in their 50s, and they wake up and they're like, ugh, I don't know my kids. I forgot to actually be present for them. Or we also know people that are divorced because they let the focus on business cause them to lose focus on their life. I learned this when I was working as the head of security for The Billionaire, which we talked about in the last podcast. He had ultra focus on business, made a ton of money, had mega yachts. Like, a common day was to go from the south of France. He'd tell me in the morning, Itamar, get the jet ready. We'd go to the jet in Nice. We'd fly to the Caribbean within an hour's notice. We'd take a helicopter from the airport in not St. Bart's, island next to it. No,
I'm guessing
St. Martin. We'd land there, then take the chopper from the airport in St. Martin to the yacht, and land on the yacht itself in St. Bart's. That was a common day, and it looked great. But the reality is that he had a terrible family, and he was so unhappy because of it, that it was this paradoxical thing where he thought he achieved all the success, but he didn't get what he really wanted, was to feel loved and appreciated, because he just never focused on his kids, never kept a relationship with his wife. And I say this in the book, but the eventual divorce, the judge said that this was the most unhappy family he's ever seen. And this is a divorce judge. And it's like, why some concerns are actually valid, that if you focus all in on just the business, you can lose yourself. Okay, great. So what do you do? For me, for example, I have in my calendar as recurring events, like you said, every day at 6:15, I take my son out for a bike ride. We have 2 date nights a week with my wife. One of them is an active one where we go surfing. Another one is usually when we have. And these are certain guardrails that I have in place that, for example, when I was writing this book, and like, you've written books, you've written a couple of them, you know how intensive an activity it is, that they ensured that while I went intensely at my goal, the important things wouldn't fall apart. And like, those were valid concerns, that I'd lose connection with my wife or my son. I didn't want that to happen. Now, everybody has these in their own way. It could be they're concerned that social life will get boring if they eat healthy, whatever it may be. It could be that they're concerned that they won't be able to connect with other people because food is their love language. They grew up in a culture that emphasizes that more. So what are certain guardrails? Because again, like, there's a minimum effective dose. There's an 80-20 of what will get you that connection or that craving, that feeling that you want. And you as the pro, I'll ask you, Andy, like, what is the minimum effective dose? Someone says, I still want to go party, for example, and I'm sure you've dealt with this a lot. What can I do with my diet? Say, okay, like, you do this once a week or you do that. What could that be for them?
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about this guardrails and we'll come back to that. Yeah, no, I like it. Specifically in my life, guardrails for me could be on what we've been talking about. If I'm away for a week, I'm not on the hook for creating the content that week.
Because that creates depression.
I can do it in advance, but I'm not going to break myself and beat myself up if I haven't got the content out that week. That's okay. The pod is different. I queue it all up in advance. Love these conversations, but for that social media stuff, I'm going to take the pressure off and do that. Why can I do that? Because when I audit my calendar over the past year and I look at all of the travel that I've had, I can see that actually it's turning out to be about 15% of the time, of the weeks of the year. And if it's 15% of the weeks of the year, I can now look at myself seriously and I can say, okay, if I did 85%, would I still get the result I want? Hell yes. Great. So now I can reduce the pressure that I feel on myself so that I'm no longer moody on vacation or whatever, or stressed just before it and scrambling after it. I can release that pressure on myself by, I don't know, arbitrary percentages here, but let's say 80%, right? And just by saying, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to worry about it. Sure, it's great if I can, but I won't.
Can I speak to that?
Please, yeah.
So there's going to be some people, and like I would have been one of them in my younger days, that would have listened to this and been like, what a wuss. He needs to just toughen up and do it. He needs to do everything correct all the time.
Yeah, that's where everyone goes
The
wrong.
reality is that perfectionism isn't a strategy. It's a response to insecurity. It's like we don't feel good enough. So we're like, okay, how can we make it perfect? We all know logically that it's not realistic to be perfect. Yes, you can pursue excellence and you should. Perfectionism, though, is not realistic. For example, I've never heard of any special ops unit that one of their core values is perfectionism. But I've seen a lot, including my own, that the core value was a relentless pursuit of excellence. When you recognize you can't be perfect, you become more realistic. Like how you're saying, you know what? That is an actual pursuit of excellence. If I increase and I'm 85% of the time, 85% of the weeks, I put out the content that I know will grow everything, great. And it also keeps you in, like how you said, it doesn't tip you over to that anxious, overwhelmed, this is too much, I'm traveling, I need to do content. It just keeps you consistently and sustainably in that peak performance zone, which is what it's all about. It's not about how you said, like becoming really keen, getting really excited, and then just doing everything for a week and then dropping. It's about how can you stay consistently in that peak performance zone so that your results compound and you actually keep winning. So I just wanted to elaborate on this. I think you said it very well.
Yeah, I mentioned this in a pod that we recorded a couple of weeks back. I'm not sure when that will be released in terms of the schedule, so I'll repeat it here. There's a client who had an opportunity. He went away to Greece. He went away for a week, came back. He had an absolute blast. He had an opportunity to go again in 2 weeks' time, but now for a couple of weeks more. He was going into that first holiday in the best week of his life. And that would only give him another couple of weeks before going off to Burning Man, which is happening around now, time that we're recording this. So that's a lot of travel that he's been doing. But he'd be coming into that first holiday in the condition of his life, looking fantastic, feeling amazing. This is a guy, he runs a company. I don't have permission to say his name or the company, but he's always been that skinny fat South Asian guy, right? Skinny fat Indian guy. And now he's just looking tremendous and really feeling it. And he was a bit nervous coming to me and he says, look, I think I want to do it, but I'm not sure if I should. And I'm like, mate, go for it. Why? Why can we say that? Because what you do 10 and a half, 11 months of the year is by far the most important. It's not about what happens the other like 10% of the time.
And I think this is a lot of people, the reason they're actually not as great as they could be is because they're afraid elite performance is a trap, and it's not. It's like you can create a situation where you can achieve a whole lot more and still enjoy your life. And that's the whole concept of guardrails. A lot of times once people see, okay, I want to achieve this, they say it, and then the back of their head, like immediately a voice tries to pull them back and say, no, it's a trap. If we commit to that, life is going to be terrible. But the reality is you can create a situation where you're both achieving a lot and also enjoying your life. And that is the point of these guardrails. And like for anyone that's listening in that's afraid to go all in on a goal, even though they know how to do it, just ask yourself, is there a part of me that's telling me this won't be fun or why this is a bad idea, that I can just put a simple solution in place, like a trip or a date night or whatever it may be. And I say, oh, if I have this in place, it still feels nice. I still enjoy life. Because if you have that in place, then you give yourself permission to go. And that, like, I think is basically guardrails in a nutshell.
Yeah. Where this comes out in terms of physique goals and chasing them, it obviously depends once you've audited what you've been doing the past 5 or 10 years to get out of shape. If you can identify 1 or 2 key things, and most people will, then you need to consider whether you need to remove that completely or limit it. And it could be both. It can be one or the other. And in certain circumstances, one is more advisable on the other. So let's take a most extreme one. UK Sunday drinking culture and drinking culture generally, for many people, is just horrible for your health. Sunday afternoons in the pub, drink all day, eat crap all day, you're going to undo pretty much everything that you've managed to do during the week.
Caloric deficit.
Health, wellness, calorie deficit, everything, right? Unfortunately. Because many people, they'll start at midday and then they'll just go through until 8, 9, whatever it is, right? And that's going to be a lot of calories, a lot of pints. You're setting yourself up in a bad way for the week, right? If that is you, then the answer is probably not to do that just once a month, because then you're going to have the same circle of friends and they're going to be nagging you to come to the pub, come to the pub, come to the pub, come to the pub. But you're just going to do it once a month and it's just not going to be sustainable. At some point, you're going to crack. You probably need to find yourself a new friendship circle, which probably means you're going to have to find some new hobbies, preferably some outdoor active hobbies. Could be a run club, hiking club, cycling club, whatever it is.
Can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
I think the important thing is that people sometimes confuse what they actually, like someone in that situation that confused, I want to go to the pub. No, you want social social connection. And that's how you got to think about it from first principles. Your concern isn't that I won't be able to go to the pub anymore if I do this diet. Your concern is that I won't be able to have fun on Sundays and just relax and enjoy myself with a couple of people and chill out. And if you get it down to that level, then you can think, okay, what other avenues could provide that thing that I desire? Like you said, running clubs, or like even jiu-jitsu or surfing or CrossFit or whatever it might be. Like, as long as you can figure out, what do I actually want? What is my actual true concern? You can usually put in a guardrail.
There we go.
Cool. Should we move on to the next one?
It was anchors,
performance
right?
anchors.
Performance anchors. Can we talk about?
Yeah, I'll actually give a health example. This is a good one that can make sense. One of the clients I worked with had an 8-figure company, and we figured out his next step into success, what he wanted to do, and broke down his most direct path, gave him a couple of very clear actions, but they were intense. And we said, great, like, any guardrails? Nothing really? Cool. Put those in place, moved on. And then he shows up to our coaching call the following week, and he's exhausted. Look at him. You can just tell he has bags under his eyes and he's exhausted.
What you did to him?
I didn't do anything. This is the thing. So I don't remember. I'm not going to use his real identity. I don't remember the name we called him in the book, but basically I said, dude, what happened? And he's like, oh, I really wanted to be elite. And I said, okay, I'm going to do all this stuff. So I also got a gut health coach. I also got a new personal trainer that I'm doing every day. And I also signed up for evening yoga. Yeah. The wild thing is that this guy was in phenomenal shape. He was like 190 pounds with veins in his abs, like legit shape. It was definitely not the constraint on him living his best life. Now, this example sounds funny because he already figured out what he needed to do, and then he added even more on. So we can clearly see it. But the reality is that most of us already have all these unnecessary things that we do in our life as is. And we have to basically do an audit and assess what we can strip away. Some things are light performance anchors, like you said earlier, like just the Netflix at night, the WhatsApp group chats that you don't need to be in, that constantly bug you, all these little habits that once you hear about them, like somebody confronts you about it, you're like, yeah, I shouldn't do that. That makes sense. That doesn't help me in any which way. Things are just nonsense that are easy to let go of. Those slow you down a little bit in life, like you said. But there's also the heavy performance anchors. These are usually something that you have a deep emotional pull towards. It could be a sense of obligation or loyalty, or just a very big sunk cost. This would be an example of like your friends from the pub telling you like, oh, what, you think you're better than us? All these anchors that hold you back to that previous version of yourself that you came to change. And those are the ones that are very challenging and difficult to cut. But once you do, they make the biggest impact. The most extreme version I've seen with a client is with Scott, that Scott had built up a multi-million-dollar business in his 20s, and then he fell into like success in his 20s. He got addicted to drugs and ended up going to jail. And as part of his recovery, he was in Narcotics Anonymous. The community there did help him to become clean. And at the same time, it kept reminding him that, quote unquote, you are just an addict. You need to remember that. And when I met him, he wanted to do more. But in reality, he was afraid that if he did more, that he'll relapse, because that's what caused that in his 20s. And when we broke it down, I asked him, like, do you have any urge to use? Are you in any environment where that's prevalent? And he said no. He said, honestly, I think this is a non-issue. And we said, okay, great. So do you want to go? And he said, yes, but I'm afraid those people will judge me or tell me it's not a good idea. And like, it was this very challenging thing for him. And why like I commend him, and I think he was so courageous for doing that, is that he recognized that these people that actually really helped him and made him feel good, because every day they applauded him, you're clean, amazing you, were actually a performance anchor for him having the life that he wanted now. And these heavy performance anchors, that's why they're so difficult, because a lot of times it's that employee was that hero when he just got started, but now the role outgrew him, or that person in your life that was your best friend when you were 13, but now is just a very negative person that always drags you down or takes you in health-wise to eat at the wrong places or whatever it may be. But when you cut those things out of your life, the amount of change you make and how fast is wild. And that's why I'm a big proponent of the performance anchors. We share in the book exactly how to cut it out in a very effective way where it causes the least amount of collateral damage possible. But once you cut them out, they can make such a big change.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what we mean there by performance anchor. Imagine that you're climbing a mountain, right? But you have a physical anchor on you, dragging on the rock, right? It's going to be much more difficult. You cut that, it's a big, thick chain, but once you manage to cut that, everything will be easier. It's not an anchor in the sense of you're anchoring yourself into, let's say, a better community that you want to be. Real example, I wanted to be more fit cardio. So I started cycling, and then I put myself around people who were really good at cycling. That very quickly dragged my fitness level up. Now I'm still the least fit person in that group, and it's going to continue to drag my fitness level up. I'm getting closer, but I'm still the least fit person, right? But someone else might look at me and be like, you do so many miles. And I'm like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Because I'm now in this group of people who are just far fitter. Now, similarly, where this could apply for people training, let's say that you're in a gym. You've been training for quite a while now. You might even be training at home, but you found that you're just phoning it in every workout. You're going through the motions. Nothing is really progressing. You're not particularly excited, but you're doing the work. That's okay at some points when life is quite stressful, but you don't want that to just be the norm and the default. Very often for people, simply moving themselves into a gym where everyone is really getting at it, even if they make no friends there and talk to no one, just the fact that they're around people who are really going for it and getting at it just helps them unlock a new level of their performance that they didn't know that they had in them. And that can be huge.
Yeah, like I said, in jiu-jitsu, there's a saying, the easiest way to become a black belt is to get yourself in a room full of black belts. Now, with the kind of really back to the performance anchors, the negative ones, let's call it for the context here, is that usually when you remove the negative stuff, there's a void. And if you already have done the steps before that and you have your intention about where you want to go, what you want to do, once that void is there, you can actually fill it with something positive. You're not just trying to fill something positive, let's say go to the new gym, while you also have those friends that try to tell you every day, come to the pub and drink. That's going to be a battle that you don't want to have to keep fighting. So if you can first remove that, and then from that void, put it with something positive, like you said, a positive anchor, let's call it, that's how winning's done.
Right. So the 5 a.m. we're going to get up and go for a cycle on Sunday morning now makes the Saturday night binge drinking session impossible. And you may think that's a trade-off that maybe you don't want to make because your party days are not over yet at first, but you might find that you get really super into it. Right?
And say something about this. This is the really interesting thing. This is not in the book, but one thing I've done a lot with my clients, I notice is a wild thing. When you tell someone, hey, let's make this change, parts of them resist it, right? Hey, don't go to the pub anymore, just do 5 a.m. cycling. However, if you tell someone you know what? Why don't we run an experiment? Let's just try it. Let's try it for 3 weeks. All right? We don't have to commit to it. We're just going to try it for 3 weeks. We're just going to try it and then we'll see what it is. For whatever reason, not having to commit in that level and having that kind of finality, it frees your brain. And all of a sudden you feel this, oh, okay, I can try it for 3 weeks. That's not actually a really big deal. So harp on your point and piggyback off it to anybody out there who's resisting doing something. Don't tell yourself you need to let go of this or you need to do that. Just try it. Just try it for 3 weeks. Have a very time-bound commitment of you're going to try it for just 3 weeks. It's just an experiment. Just go from there. See where it takes you. It's wild how much permission and freedom that gives your brain.
Yeah. And then if you do like it, again, you don't have to tell yourself that it's permanent. You can run another 6-week experiment, perhaps with 2 free days in there where you get to do the former habit if you want. It's just, again, avoiding this all or nothing black and white scenario that we often get ourselves in that trap. Step 5 then. So you want clarity. Step 1, you want to find the most direct path. And this means the most direct path to getting towards that goal that you've set without overwhelming yourself with 50 other side quests, right? You really want to have the 2 or 3 things that you really need to be focused on. Ideally 1, but often it's a collection of things when it comes to fitness. Then strategic guardrails, performance anchors, we've talked about that, things that are dragging you down that you may need to cut off multiple small anchors or potentially one big one. Step 5 then, you call it emotional fortitude. What is that? Where does this show up? How does
That's really the war within. So what we've done right up until now, we've tried to do all the easier stuff. So getting clarity on what you want all feels great. It feels inspiring. You're like, oh, I know what I want. Externalizing and saying, what would somebody in a similar situation need to do in order to achieve success? Also relatively easy. Putting in guardrails. That makes you feel safe. And again, it gives your brain more permission to take action because, okay, I don't have to sacrifice things needlessly. Performance anchors, we're starting to get a little, the light ones, like you said, they're pretty easy snips. But the hard ones, those require courage. Now this last part about emotional fortitude and winning the war within, that's what, and I'm not saying this just one gender, but that's really what separates the men from the boys, of being able to do the right thing regardless of how you feel. Now, this is not about blind discipline or motivation, which is I think where most people get this wrong. They get frustrated. They're like, I have this, I know I should be doing this, but I do that instead. What's wrong with me? Why can't I get more motivated? Why can't I be more disciplined? I just need to tough it up or I need to find a stronger why, feel more aligned, whatever it may be. The reality is, and this is what I learned from the Mossad's former chief psychologist, is that you have different parts in you. And there's this kind of war within that you have to win. And the way to win that, despite what I think most of us A-type individuals think, is not just to push harder. Like whenever we feel the resistance, I think a lot of us had to do this in our 20s. We're like, okay, let me just fight harder against it. I need to overcome it. But as we said earlier, a big part of it is sustainability. Like we want to make it a sustainable battle that we can constantly win. And the way we do that is by weakening that part of us that causes this resistance. And the way we do that is by understanding the beliefs that actually fuel it. Because if we can break the beliefs of why we think taking these actions on our most direct path is possibly dangerous, a bad idea, or likely to cause us harm or be a threat in some way, then we remove the fear component. And when we remove the fear component, all of a sudden the pressure drops and we can just do the thing. Because like you said earlier in your example, if you just said, okay, I need to post these things on Instagram and on YouTube, and what are your concerns? Oh, it'll just take up a little bit of time. Be like, okay, that's easy. We can find that time in your calendar. But when you say, what will people think about me? Possible rejection from strangers, all of a sudden that puts a lot of pressure on this. It makes it feel like a big deal that you have to pump yourself up in order to do. Now, if we can get to the root of that and actually change your mindset around this, not through fairy tale wishing, woo or crystals, positive thinking, but it's like break down that belief of why you think this could actually be a dangerous thing. Then all of a sudden, just doing that same thing doesn't feel as difficult. Because it doesn't feel as difficult, it's much more sustainable and you do it much more often and that success compounds. So that's kind of it. And so a couple let's call it like a couple bullet points about this. One, it's not about motivation. It's about reducing the fear that you feel. Two, you don't reduce that fear with general healing. It's not about going back and saying, what are the worst things that ever happened to me? Or what is my biggest trauma? That is a very general and, I don't know, needle in a haystack kind of approach. And I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, they get frustrated because they're saying, I've wasted years in therapy. Like I talk about it once a week, but nothing really changes because you're just looking at general things. Instead of that, you want to focus on this like a sniper and say, these are the 1 to 3 things I said I should be doing. They're the actions in my direct path. And again, like we boiled down to a very clear thing. Like how you said, like, I need to publish 1 YouTube video a week. I need to do 3 camera-facing videos a week. Wait, what are my beliefs specifically about those actions? And there's certain formulas, it's called like prompts or formulas that we run people through in the book in order to find this out. But then what you uncover all of a sudden is that you had these beliefs that you didn't know about this stuff. Even in the beginning of the conversation, you said, I don't want to do it. And I said, because, and I prompted you to figure out your belief. And then you said, because people might judge me. I said, and then, oh, they might not get approval. And once we find these are the actual mental blocks that are stopping you from success. Not general trauma from your childhood or whatever it may be, but the specific mental blocks that hold you back, that cause that lower part of you, that lower level you, to pop up, cause you to panic and underperform. And if you go through this systematic process, finding out exactly what are the beliefs that are causing you to not take the direct actions you should be taking, then you can solve them in a very short amount of time and you can actually take action. And paradoxically, by not just focusing, the whole approach I have and why like the entrepreneurs I work with, they get such big financial results because we actually focus on results, not making them feel better. It's why everything is about what do you want? What are the direct actions to get there? How can we get you to do them? But paradoxically, when you actually achieve more, it also boosts your self-esteem, shockingly. And you get better feelings by actually going for achievements in your future and removing the crud and achieving them instead of just focusing on your past aimlessly. So before I keep going, because I think I've spoken for a little bit, does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it's sparked a few thoughts.
Please.
Let's say there's this fear of, so we'll carry on with the YouTube and Instagram example here, and then we're going to move it into fitness. So let's say there's a fear of looking silly, that I'll be mocked by random people on the internet. Mm-hmm. When I think of that, and is that a rational fear? I think we're getting to this emotional fortitude piece, but please let me know if I'm getting it wrong here. And then I think about, there are always going to be idiots on the internet.
Can I coach you a little bit here, just so we can see it? Okay, so you said, I'm afraid of putting it out because I'll be mocked by random people on the internet.
That made me feel bad.
Okay, but before they make you feel bad, there's some kind of fear there. There's something that you think this will have a consequence of some sort.
Perhaps it won't resonate and I'll look bad, and then that will have a negative effect on the business.
Like it could be that. And it could also be that like you had some stuff happen in the past where somebody made fun of you, and then all of a sudden like you just lost your entire social circle. That had a very consequential effect. It's like, this is the stuff that you need to figure out because you have specific performance limiting beliefs, not just general fears or, okay, what is a specific reason why I'm afraid of this? Because I think doing this will have this consequence on my life. And like how we talked about, it all goes back to those primal fears that like this, if I have some uncertainty in my life, I could walk the wrong way on the way to the watering hole in the savannah in Africa, and a lion's gonna eat me. That's super dangerous. I get terrified. Oh, if people don't like me or they don't approve of me, then I'm gonna get outcasted by the tribe and die alone. I should avoid anything that has to do with that. Or I'm not actually good enough to do this. So before I try it, I have to make sure that I've validated, that I have enough degrees, that I have enough success on whatever before I try. Because again, if I fail, everyone's going to judge that and I'm going to be kicked out by the tribe again. There's something there that always ties back to those fears that causes us to behave irrationally, illogically, out of context. Because you and I both know that if you post on the internet, even if it gets crickets, it won't matter at all. And you will have some posts that's what's going to happen. However, a part of you is trying to trick you into saying this could be mortal danger in some way. Right. That's the war within. Like, the emotional fortitude is being able to recognize what's going on. Say, I hear that voice in my head trying to tell me to stop. This is dangerous. And I have the ability to recognize it is not, and to do it regardless with that feeling. Not to wait until that feeling completely dissipates, but how can I do it despite that, on top of that?
Whenever I speak in a way that's true to myself and who I am as a person, and when I'm speaking to someone, say one-on-one or one-on-few, I've never had really a bad reaction. Because people can always see that it's very sincere. People tend to like what I say, and I guess that comes from just having years of experience of doing this, right? Like, there's never been someone who's been negative to my face, let's say. So I can see the irrationality in that. If we think of, say, someone, if we role play for a second, and I'm someone who has been through cycles of going to the gym, getting motivated, dieting and rebounding, and again, quitting, and I've done that multiple times now. If I am that person and I put myself in their shoes, yeah, I'm scared of the people around me seeing me try yet again and fail yet again.
So let's break their belief down. The belief they're probably going to hold is that if I try this again, it's just going to fail anyway. That's probably the belief they have. And if it fails again, people are just going to ridicule me and they're going to think less of me and so on. So what we do with these beliefs, like I said, it's not about just positive thinking and saying like, how can we find a more positive belief and all that kind of. Let's stress test if the situation is true. So let's say they signed up with you to work with you. And their belief is if I try this after they've already signed up, like you said, okay, we're going to figure out this plan for you. This is your plan. Happy days. And they still have that belief, right? It's the last part of this chain of, let's call it inputs to get someone to perform. You say, this is my belief that if I try again, I'm just going to fail and everyone's going to make fun of me. So then you ask them, okay, where did this belief come from? Where did you learn this to be true? That if you try, you will fail. And they're like, oh, I just, for the past couple of years, I've had cycles where I'm super keen. I tried to do something. I got excited. And then after a week, I got exhausted from it and it didn't work. And yeah, so it was just these boom and bust cycles. And you say, okay, understood. So what's actually true now in today's world? Now, actually, I have a program that feels very sustainable. And I also have someone to hold me accountable. And I'm in an environment where that's the norm. Okay, so do you think that you of today, with this context, if you tried it in this way, are you still thinking that you're just going to fail and everyone will ridicule you? Or is this a different situation? And they'll probably say, this is a different situation. Great. So that belief in your current context is false. And when you run them through that logical chain, the more logical people, you can tell their brain breaks a little bit. There's kind of exhale, and then they're ready to progress because they say, okay, you know what? In this context, this is actually not true. Now I'll add this. When I started coaching, I used to think that was enough. Somebody would have said, oh, it's not true. Great, I can do it. I'd be like, cool. I know you want to do it. Now you recognize this is not true. On your way, go execute. And people would. They would execute for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they would regress. And it was this weird thing that I didn't understand why for a while. The reality is that even out of the beliefs that we know aren't true and hold us back, there's some kind of hidden benefit for us. Have you ever stayed in a relationship that you knew was terrible, but for whatever reason, you just stayed in it for a bit too long?
Yeah, I think most people can relate.
It could be that it's the comfort of not being alone, even though they knew they shouldn't be with this person. Could be that, honestly, like, especially when you're young, like good sex, a social partner, whatever it may be. You should avoid it. You know this relationship isn't good for you and it's dragging you down, but there's something in it, just enough to keep you in. You're getting something out of it. And a lot of times it's like you have to get to that level of acceptance that like, okay, I recognize that it's good sex. I recognize that I'm not alone. I recognize all these things. I'm willing to give them up. I accept that like me going to the next better relationship or whatever it may be requires me to give these things up that have some goodness in them. The beliefs works the same way. So out of the beliefs that are false, there's probably still some positive in them, which is why you hold on to them. For example, this is the most uncomfortable one that I usually tell people. For example, let's say about the person who says, if I try again, then I'll quit. One of the benefits they're getting out of that, of holding on to that belief, is a sense of self-pity, whether it's self-pity from themselves or from other people. They get to tell themselves like, okay, like I can't do it. Poor me. They get to relieve themselves of the responsibility of change. And unless we can figure out the beliefs that we hold that both they're not true, what's actually true in this context, and what we're getting out of it, and make peace with that. That, you know what, I'm going to have to give up this pity that I get from people. And that's going to be part of it. Long-term change won't happen.
People getting addicted to their pity party,
It's addicting.
getting addicted to the pain.
Yeah, it could be many things. Like again, but it's so wide. Like we all have these little hidden benefits of these beliefs. They give us a sense of safety. A lot of times in business, let's say someone believes that they have to oversee everything in the business. They know that stunts companies' growth, but it just gives them a feeling of control, gives them an illusion of control. They've said, okay, are you willing to give up that feeling, that illusion of control in order to grow? If they do not honestly say yes, then they'll just revert back to trying to control everything. It's just how that works. And unless we're willing to accept that growth is a trade-off, this is the price that it requires, we stay stuck.
When has that been true for you, would you say, in your quite varied career? SF to air marshalling, where you can talk about BJJ as part of it and performing at the top levels of the world, to now the mindset coaching, where what's an example that sticks out in your mind?
So it's from in between all those sections. What happened in BJJ, where I stopped doing BJJ, was that at a certain point, I got pretty good, but it didn't really help my life. There was a tournament in Asia called the Now Grand Prix, and I took quadruple gold in it, which is gold in my weight class and in the open weight in gi.
You'd never met. It's not in your book. I've never heard you say that. You've just talked about how I didn't medal at the World Championships
the World Championships. That was a different level.
That's different. Okay, all right.
But the thing is that, and I can explain the story so you understand the paradox here, the disparity, that I won that. And then we go back to the hotel, and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was like, oh, let's go celebrate. And I remember thinking she wanted to go to some sushi spot down the street that wasn't hyper expensive. I remember thinking, man, I can afford this. Like my small little sponsorship fees or whatever aren't going to cover that. And I felt such shame and like where I'd taken my life towards, that I had spent all these years, all this sacrifice, and I couldn't afford like a basic sushi place. And I was like, I need to be better than this. And it was basically like a night that I was like, I'm done with jiu-jitsu. Like, this is not going to be my path anymore. I remember deciding that back then. And fortunately, about 2 weeks after, that's when my old boss from the time I was working undercover in Moscow, he messaged me out of the blue and he was like, hey, Itamar, you looking for a job? Just got this wild offer from the movies. A billionaire bought this mega yacht. He wants you to take it. And we quickly chatted. And he was like, listen, it's going to be 3 times whatever you made back in the Sheen Bet. A very nice 6-figure salary. You're going to work 1 month on, 1 month off, but get paid full year, like year round, and plane tickets anywhere you want in the world. And I jumped on it. And at first, that job was amazing. Like just the increase in status and self-esteem because of the salary and building the team. Like I was a chief, so I had to build a team, get that sort of recruit people. And literally my first 2 weeks on the job were a reconnaissance trip to the Caribbean, to that St. Bart's, St. Martin area, where my job was just to go there 2 weeks ahead of time, go eat at the nice restaurants, check out nice places, and just tell them this is a good place to go, this is not a good place to go. And I was getting paid for that. It was wild. But like after that novelty initially faded, I didn't like the job. Like I said earlier, the billionaire was not a nice person. He was not this Richard Branson type. He was very controlling, very demeaning to most people around him, to security less, I think, because he understood that it's not wise to demean your security, the people that are keeping you safe. But basically, I realized I didn't want to be there anymore. And the challenge was that I had not yet proven in life that I had a different way to be able to make money. Like it was either special ops or security. Because of my career in special operations, I didn't go to college. I skipped a bunch of stuff and I felt trapped. However, there was a certain point where I was like, I have to give up this salary if I want things to change. And I just saw how everybody else in the industry that worked, let's call it security for these kind of people, was very unhappy because these rotations of 1 month on, 1 month off, while seem great when you have a family, it's going to break up your family being away for so long. And that was, I think, the biggest thing for me to have to give up. And I dragged my feet on it a little bit, to be honest, that I recognize I'm going to have to give up the status that comes with it. And I'm going to have to give up financial comfort that comes with it, the financial security that comes with it, in order to try to pursue something in entrepreneurship. It's like basically I read the 4-Hour Workweek on a flight back home and I was like, fuck, this is a path. Okay, what am I going to have to give up in order to pursue this path? And it was that job with everything that came with it, and going from making a lot of money to all of a sudden day one of entrepreneurship, you make 0 money. And it was one of those kind of burn the boats moments. And that was that.
Connect that thought then with where you are.
What happened is I read the 4-Hour Workweek. I thought I could open up a marketing agency. I can do that. That's doable.
What? A mortgage
marketing
agency?
Yeah.
Marketing agency. Yes.
And we did that and it was going all right. It was growing. And I was at a conference with a bunch of other marketing agency owners. And I asked the organizer if I could give a talk about my lessons from special operations, about how to deal with stress and how to manage risk and all that. And my goal was just to get myself in front of people who were more successful than me. Like how you said, like in the bicycle club. I said, if I can do that, maybe they'll want to help me out a bit. And at the end of that talk, it was received very well. And I said, by the way, guys, guys, and I raised my hand like shamelessly, like, this is where we currently are. This is what we're doing with revenue. If this helped you, I'd love to hear your advice on how we could be doing better or how I could improve. And about a dozen people came up to me at the end. When you give a talk, people usually come chat with you and said, our suggestion is that you do not do this marketing agency, that you do coaching. And my response was like, no, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu anymore. I'm done with that. And they said, no, you can do business coaching. And I remember asking them, that's a thing? And a couple were like, yes, we will pay you right now if you're willing to take us on. How it started and how we got here.
You certainly do have an ability to just cut straight to the point with people and dig in very fast. And that's what makes you and your coaching very
Appreciate
different. And I think this book, it is not a long read. It's about 130 pages.
Yeah, on purpose.
And I take that to be a very good thing.
Yep.
We've all read books that have just got unnecessary fluff, right? And there's no point. You want to make it as short as possible. You say that you consider this really a manual for people for elite performance. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. So it'll be out now, the time that you're listening to this, guys. Elite Performance, Israeli Special Ops Mindset System to win the war within and achieve audacious goals. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And if you enjoy this conversation with Itamar, please check it out. Any parting thoughts? Any final words, Itamar?
Yes, I'll say this. So like you said, accountability and help with this stuff is everything. My programs are expensive, especially the one-on-one, they are expensive. However, as part of the book promotion, especially when this is coming out, we're running a book promotion in October. You can sign up and you can enter a raffle to win actually free coaching spots in the arena, which is our flagship program that you said several of the Rip Body people have been through, and also some one-on-one coaching. It's our way to just dramatically over-deliver to promote the book. If these concepts made sense to you and you're like, oh, that would be helpful if someone could help me with this, I'll ask you guys to put a link below to Itamar, and you can sign up to get all the details on how you can enter the raffle. The book right now costs literally $2. We're keeping it as the Kindle version, $2 for this launch phase in October. Less than a cup of coffee. There's absolutely no reason you shouldn't be able to get that.
Oh, that's the steal.
Yeah. And again, you can win coaching that's worth tens of thousands of dollars with the one-on-ones. So go to itamarmarani.com/book and get the details.
Love it. I'm excited for it to come out. I'm excited to have also a physical copy whenever that eventually comes out, and have you sign that.
Sort of one like these when they manage to come out.
I like it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, love it. Looks nice, man.
Thank you very much for having me.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation with Itamar, don't forget to subscribe. And Itamar's book, Elite Performance, the Israeli Special Ops Mindset System to win the war within and achieve audacious goals, is available for pre-order now, and it will be released October 1st. Just go to itamarmarani.com/book. The link for that is in the description. Now, there are a few ways that we can help you at Rip Body. First, there's the free articles on the website. Second, we've got the books. And finally, coaching. So if you're curious about that, head to ripbody.com/coaching. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next episode.